Welcome to Talking Sock. Australia is a big place, so the engineers, visual artists and sculptors at A Blanck Canvas make their puppets to size.
I've been geeking out in VR.
In his studio based in Melbourne's North Coburg, Joe Blanck is the mastermind behind these larger-than-life roving puppets.
Her wish was to meet a dragon, and we delivered her a baby dragon, and one of the best jobs that we've ever done.
Join Joe and I now here on Talking Sock. Welcome to Talking Sock, your one-stop shop for all things puppetry, arts and practitioners. My name is Pete Davidson and I'm joined today in the Coburg North studio by correspondence with Joe Blanck of A Blanck Canvas. Welcome to our late night special, Joe, and thank you for being here at this hour. I know you've had quite a crazy day, so we do appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, it is the after hours, but we're doing okay.
So, Joe, first question. Joe, why puppets?
Why puppets? Good question. I do ask myself this a lot, actually. Why, willingly throw myself into a world of dolly wagglers and weirdos? It's a cool art form, man. I'm a painter. My background, I'm many things, but my backgrounds came from being a painter and an artist and a scenic artist and then a sculptor and then props maker and then set builder and then puppets came into it. Just kind of naturally, I feel like they're like a moving sculpture, which I dig. They are an amazing medium, like a beautiful art form that has so many elements to it, that through performance art and manipulation of an inanimate object. It's a cool art form which I've fell into, really. I've always been kind of into the Muppets when I was a kid, but I never kind of dreamed it was a job at any point, and not until the point I was kind of getting paid to do it, where I was like, hey, hang on a minute, this is a real thing. But it's a really amazing art form that has so many endless elements to it. I love the fact that I can draw a character and then sculpt it and then cast it and mold it and add mechanisms to it and then bring it to life and film it and perform it and put it on stage or put it on film, or it's just a medium that kind of just evolves and moves fluidly. It's a really cool art form which I kind of stumbled across and stumbled into, which I've embraced with both arms.
I love that, with both arms. You say, I want to get into your characters a bit later because I think your characters are wonderful and inventive and so beautifully drawn up and designed and 3D animated and all of that. But I want to ask you, can you remember the first gig for you, whether it be building or performing with puppets, that you, way back when you were building sets and all that stuff? Do you remember the first time it was puppets?
Yeah, absolutely. I know it was the first time, but it was definitely a memorable one, was working on The Hobbit. Well, I was working as a scenic artist, and then I was painting and building, mostly painting the sets for The Hobbit. And then I got wind that it was for a puppet show. And I was like, oh, that's a bit silly, a puppet show. And then realised that it was a big production. It was a huge thing. And there were so many amazing puppets that were involved in it that were getting built in another studio. I think not long after that, there was The Lion, Witch and the Wardrobe, which was another big production that I was again working on the sets for. And it just started like puppetry is a thing. And I saw some of the puppets and went out to the workshop and then, we were handing over the sets and the props for that. And then I guess just started to realise that it is a big part of theatre, which I'd already been a big part of, building sets and props and doing ballet, like doing sets and props for ballets, and not doing ballet, building sets and props for ballet.
Maybe we could do a bit of ballet. I don't know.
Oh, you just watch. But, doing the sets and props for operas and ballets and theatre and musicals and then puppets came into it, and went, wow, this is something I've always been interested in, but didn't really register it as a thing. The only thing that when I was, I kind of started when I was in my very early 20s. I think by then I was, in my teens, I was kind of into the Muppets and Fraggle Rock, and that's what I knew of puppetry, and that was kind of it. And I guess probably naive in what was puppetry at that time, and then so seeing that in Melbourne that there was a big thing, some big productions that were happening around that time, and I was a part of it, and then kind of got interested in the art form. And then started to kind of pick up and learn a little bit more about it, and then go, okay, well, there's companies that do workshops and stuff, and then I kind of got started to get involved in that. From then I kind of it kicked off.
There's a bit of a consensus, Joe, that Australia's, and I use inverted comma fingers, brand of puppetry is very kind of large-scale roving puppets that you produce, the same kind that you produce. And the visuals involved in this are spectacular, and the scale allows audiences in public spaces, and namely festivals, to remember you and your work. So first of all, how does it feel to think that your kind of puppetry has helped shape and develop Australia's puppet identity? But also, what is it like to have that sort of more fleeting audience interaction, and how do you design and develop your shows to service that?
Yeah, look, I think Melbourne puppetry has got a lot of diversity in scale and performance, and I think large scale puppetry is one section of that. I'd like to think that I have some play in that. I'd like to hope I've made some sort of part or stamp in that section. But I think puppetry has got a really huge range in Melbourne and Australia in puppetry, whether it's large scale puppetry or shadow puppetry or marionette puppetry. I think Melbourne in general has got a really fantastic community and buzz of puppetry in general. And large scale puppetry, yeah, there's a few things have been noticed. Definitely, like the Creature Technology Company, and that has, I think, have played a big part in recognising large-scale puppetry, and I was lucky enough to be a part of that through Walking with Dinosaurs and King Kong, How to Train a Dragon, shows that we worked on while I was there, and it's such an amazing opportunity to be a part of the team that brought those characters to life, and the technology and skill that was involved in those shows, and the grand scale of them, and hats off to the guys who organised that, because I think the budget and the scale that's involved in bringing those shows to life is a whole different conversation. To sell that idea or that opportunity to bring those shows to life. So, I'm lucky enough to be part of that team in that sense. But I think in the work that we've been doing recently with our large-scale puppets that we do is completely different. We kind of rely heavily on a team of puppeteers. There's no animatronics, there's no mechanisms or anything involved. It's just manipulation of a big object by multiple people, kind of bringing it to life and moving it in unison, which I love. I love the kind of teamwork aspect to it, which I think is really cool. And I definitely love technology, and probably if I had a big pot of money, I'd be throwing a hell of a lot more of animatronics into the work that we do. But I also don't think it's necessary in a lot of cases. Sometimes you bring animatronics into a puppet if you need it. If you can't get your hand in there, or you can't get multiple things moving all at once, then you bring cables and mechanisms and animatronics involved. But puppetry is about moving and manipulating something in real time and bringing it to life. What we do, we can react and move in real time in a situation when we're walking down the middle of Flinders Street and then someone jumps out in front of us. We can react, and which I love, and luckily I'm usually the guy walking around in the background listening to everybody ooh and ah over the thing that we've built, while 8 puppeteers kind of bring this amazing thing to life. And people are like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I'll check this out. And I'm like, yeah, rubbing my hands together thinking, it works. It's a great art form. And, large-scale puppetry, I think that I'm drawn to is because it does bring a big crowd and a big response to when you can connect with a crowd of people. And I love the visual of a thing walking down the street when you like a sea of people over the head of hundreds of people or thousands of people, and see this kind of monstrous thing walking towards you or something. I've always been kind of drawn to that kind of visual, whether it's through my artwork, or I think maybe that's kind of where it's evolved through loving creatures and monsters, to kind of bring this big creature to life. It's a cool visual, it's cool to see, and it's definitely fits in that kind of festival scale that I enjoy being a part of.
I mean, I love what you say about Melbourne's community of puppetry, because that's the whole reason I moved from Sydney to Melbourne, is that it is so diverse and it is so strong. And I love what your company does, because the puppeteer looking for work in me is so pleased that you would opt for having 8 puppeteers instead of having an animatronic do the work of the puppeteer. I think what you say about making animatronics for what is necessary is something that I've taken really, I really like that. And your studio is based in Melbourne's North Coburg, and you've recently taken out a lease in Williamstown, which is on the water's edge, looking back out over the city. And it's a really beautiful space that I was really privileged to visit on Friday. And from what I understand, you're now going to use this space to showcase and perform your repertoire of large-scale puppetry to audiences who can come in and out. So what are your plans for this space? It sounds so exciting.
It's just super exciting. We've been working out of our place in Coburg North for over 5 years now. And when we started, it was an empty workshop. There wasn't much going on. There was me and, a couple of other guys. And then we've grown into a team of 10 and a full workshop with lots of junk, puppet parts and materials and workbenches, and we've filled the place up. And the stuff that we do build, a lot of the stuff we do build, we get commissioned and it goes out on the road and we don't see it. But some of the stuff that we do build are our own project, and they stay with us, so we need to store them. So the workshop we've outgrown the space in Coburg North, and up until this point we've stored the puppets in parts. Sometimes we've taken them apart and we put the head over there, we put the body in the ceiling, and we put the chassis in the corner, and we put the legs in storage, and anything we can do to kind of make space for the work that we've got at the moment. And then when we do want to perform it, we've got a gig, or we're like, hey, we've got some time, let's take this out for a rehearsal. Then we have to kind of gather all the parts and put it together and put it in a truck, and we can't even put it together. Some of the puppets that we build, we can't even fit in the workshop all together. So it's a time consuming and expensive kind of process to put it in a truck and move it and hire the space and whatever, and it's not productive to be able to do that sometimes. And so the opportunity of Williamstown came up, and we've had our eye on this space for quite a while. Just recently, we thought, we're either going to have to move, completely relocate the workshop, or find a new space that we can do our kind of performances and rehearsals in. And luckily, it's a good time or bad time of 2020, when it's the shit's hit the fan, where the space is available. It's a great space. We've just moved in. It's a destination that you can go to and see a performance. Take your family, bring the kids down and go for gelati and pizza and walk along the beautiful bay and then come see some puppets. It just seemed like perfect timing and a perfect location for us to kind of shift down. An absolute scary time for us to take on a new space when work's not that great at the moment. Everything's come to an absolute halt, but we feel like we needed to think of other avenues to keep our team together and to perform and make puppets and do what we do. So I think it's just came down to timing, where we've taken on the space, and we've had some support from the city of Hobsons Bay. We contacted them and told them we were thinking of doing this. They were totally into it. So, we kind of went, all right, bugger it, let's expand, and took everything that was kind of jammed in storage and was just such a shame to kind of have all these amazing puppets shoved away in a storage facility where we could kind of get them out on display and show off what we're doing. But then we can rehearse, and every time we want to do a practice run on a puppet, we can just kind of wheel it out the door, or we can do it in the space, which is one, super exciting that we can just do it without any, really thinking about it. But also, it doesn't cost anything. Now we can just kind of do it and put it on display. And we've done it a handful of times while I've been there, and we just got a crowd of people just come around, and fishermen kind of run over with their kids and taking photos, and it's awesome. It's really fun.
I've got so many questions now that you've said all that. The first thing I want to ask is, I was just talking to Dennis Murphy the other day about how I think puppetry will emerge from COVID-19 and performance restrictions through outdoor performances and through busking. The opportunity that your space provides really could be that. Do you see the potential of the space in terms of its sheer size being a way of, and social distancing being sort of a way forward for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's no seats. It's a big open space. We're lucky enough to have a shed that we have access to perform and whatever. But we've got this 2,000 square meter plus outdoor area that we have access to. That's got this beautiful backdrop of the city of Melbourne. It's just such a amazing space to be in. Like, when it's not a great day, it's pretty windy and cold, and especially in Melbourne winter. But today it was just this beautiful sunny blue sky, such a beautiful sunny day to run around with some puppets, and people were out riding their bikes and having a great time, and such a lovely space to be around. And the community there's fabulous. Like, I definitely did think of it as an opportunity for theatre in this time.
And so with this exponential growth that your company has had, even from just yourself and a few other guys to now 10 people, and you found yourself as an artist and set builder now running a full-scale business, what have you learned, and how have you managed to develop those skills of running that and managing that over time?
Delegation. I think I definitely have to put my manager hat on, and then put my accountant hat on, and then put my cleaner hat on. I'm still like cleaning the bathrooms, and but it's been a massive learning curve. If somebody had told me it was going to be so hard to run a business, I may not have done it. It's totally worthwhile. It's a challenging experience as an artist to put on your multiple hats and be a spokesperson and be an accountant and be an artist at the same time. I don't pick up the tools or the paintbrush or the anything as much as I'd probably like to. But saying that, I do love being a designer, puppet designer, and a creator, and a leader and a manager to some of the best makers in the business. To have a team of ridiculously, amazingly talented people under the banner of A Blanck Canvas and creating beautiful work, and everybody being so proud of the work we do. We're working, but we're laughing and having a great time, and really some really challenging situations too. We're still, every job that we do is something we've never done before. We're always coming up with challenges to create the next work. You can never preempt what is going to happen, and I've got a budget, and when someone says, hey, how much is it going to cost to build a giant thing? And I go, oh, hang on, let me just figure that out, and I go, well, it's probably going to cost this, and they say, yes, okay, let's build it. And then we build it, So I've got to kind of imagine how it's going to be built before we can figure out how it's built. A lot of the time I'll just kind of spend the night sleeplessly trying to figure out how I'm going to create this thing, and then come back the next morning and go, oh, it's going to cost this much. And that's sometimes works out, sometimes it doesn't. There's always things that pop up, and especially when you've got a client that has an expectation of this, and you've got their client that's got an expectation of this. And when it comes to commercial works, it can get complicated when you've got multiple people that are invested in a thing, and they've all got multiple ideas of what a thing looks like and what a thing's going to do. And I think communication has been the biggest thing that I could probably pass on to anybody who's thinking about doing this or involved in this kind of work. I think you've just got to communicate as much as you possibly can to your client or your team or anybody, and it's about asking all those questions and trying to figure out all the things that could go wrong, or all the things that they could do, or things that should do. And half the time you've got a client that says, I just want it to do this, this, and this. And you go, oh, but do you want it to do this? And they go, no, I don't want it to do this. But then you build it, and then they go, oh, you know what? I'd love it if it could do this.
Gross.
And so you've got to think, pretty sure you're going to want it to be able to like stick its head up and move around and run. It's like, I just want this thing to walk. Like, but surely, it might want it to run. No, I don't want it to run. But then get to building, like, what would be great if it could run. You've got to just kind of make sure you think about all these things, that the puppet, or it could talk, or it could blink. You've got to weigh up those challenges of, okay, you don't want to overcomplicate something too as well. You've got to figure out what the client wants or what you want it to do, and what the puppet is about, and what the character is about, and what movements it may require that you haven't thought about. And if you can preempt all those things, or some of those things, it's definitely going to be helpful in the long run. Probably every job that I've ever done, I've kind of gone, you kind of push it a little bit further than what you've asked for, and it always pays off.
Nice.
It's better to over-deliver than kind of just meet expectations.
That's it, hey. And so, okay, let's talk about these conceptions, these ideas. Where do your concepts come from? And one that I want to draw attention to is the one that I met the other day, which is the Guardian and the Messenger, these enormous puppets, which I believe was for White Night in Melbourne. Can you tell us about the coupling of that and the concept?
Yeah, so the Messenger was the first large puppet we built for White Night. And basically, I've always wanted to build an archangel. So it was a winged humanoid creature. I was like, I'd love to build an archangel. And then so White Night came around, and I thought, wouldn't it be cool if we had a giant white knight for White Night? And I thought, is that cheesy?
Fun. It comes from fun.
I was like,
you need to meet Kei Yasugi.
And I'd already had the idea of the Messenger being this kind of archangel messenger of love and compassion. And I'd always this is one of the characters, because we do commissioned work and commercial work. And I thought, I'd love to build something that kind of had a statement or made a difference, or whatever. An archangel of love and compassion and understanding for everybody would be a great statement and puppet to build to deliver this kind of message, where instead of somebody walking around and going, oh, believe in me and I've got the answer and you need to believe in this and this and this, where I think religion plays a massive part in most of our lives. I'm not super religious, but I believe in religion and what it can do and the power it can have in believing in something. And the Archangel was a messenger that I had read up on and thought that it's across all religions. there's always a guardian or like a messenger and an archangel that kind of looked over everybody. And I just thought it was this thing that kind of passed on through multiple religions. And at the time, things were a bit crazy with religion in general. There was a lot of wars and arguments and things going on. And I just thought like it would be great to create this being that didn't have a, it wasn't male or female, or it was any religion, or it was all of us. It was all about us being united as one, and not about our difference. It was more about our similarities. So it has a face that has a rear projection on its face, and like I try to get as many people as I can, as diverse as I can in the time that we kind of were building it, to have male, female, black, white, Asian, anybody who could kind of be a part of the project that we had, that could speak a quote and give them words of wisdom for this puppet to deliver. And we kind of picked out a bunch of quotes that we thought that were relevant, and they were through, from, the Pope to, John Lennon, or singers or religious leaders or anybody, or that we had a positive message that we wanted to share. So we kind of collected all these quotes, and then we got all our friends and family members and stuff to record these messages. So the face on the messenger kind of scrolled through male and female and black and white, and it was supposed to have no gender, but it still ended up being male. I don't know why or how, and even I say him, but it's just, it kind of ended up that way. But the message still got across, and we had people crying on the street, and it would pick somebody out, and was the messenger, so it would walk the streets and it would find somebody and pick them out of the audience and deliver a message just directly to them. And then when it grabbed somebody and it took them aside and brought them down and went down on one knee and delivered this message to them, people cried. It was bloody amazing. It was such a really beautiful moment to see people connect with a puppet, and a large puppet too, that's operated by 8 people. The Guardian was a few years later, and again, they kind of came to us and said, have you got an idea for something that we could outdo the messenger? And I went, yeah, absolutely.
Love that confidence.
Yeah, and it already been kind of thinking of a creature that could, this big, powerful creature that we could create, and we'd already done a humanoid character, and I thought, oh, let's do a 4-legged kind of thing, and my dog passed away just at the time, and it was 17 years we'd been together, and my cat, who was 15, had passed away 3 days later. So I was pretty devastated at the time, and I just wanted to create maybe something that was a big, powerful beast that was represented both of them. And so I just thought a lion would be perfect for that, and thinking about and kind of like mulling around some ideas of how I would create that. And I wanted to do illuminated, beautiful, like lit, translucent thing. And I thought, well, a crystal lion, and then a lion being so, endangered almost, or endangered that, they're so delicate, and being almost glass and fragile and crystal, and all those kind of images came up to be this kind of crystal lion, emerged, and then so, putting these kind of shards of crystal kind of coming out of the lion's back. Instead of a mane, it was kind of these shards of crystal, and that kind of came quite quickly and naturally. It was just like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do, and then it was like, yeah, it's a fabulous idea, let's do it, and we built it. Probably a lot of thought, but felt like it was quite a quick process.
With the messenger, you've got 8 puppeteers, and on Friday when I met up with you and the puppeteers who were there for this meetup, we did something called flocking, which is basically an improvised movement sequence in which someone is always leading. Therefore, Everything falls into place. Was the messenger's 8-person puppeteer crew doing a sort of version of flocking when they chose an individual to be given a message? Or what is the sort of the sequence of puppeteers? How do you rehearse 8 people?
Yeah, look, no, short answer. That is a rehearsed, segmented performance. One of the best things about the performances that we do is that you've just got 8 people moving together, barely talking, and understanding each other and understanding what the next person needs to do. I guess it has an element of that, but it's a practiced routine that involves a step. Like we've always got a thing where, if you're going to walk, you always start on your right foot and then the right foot leads. So I guess it has a little bit of an element to that, but it is a rehearsed routine and it's something that we're constantly adding to our repertoire of moves. When, you see somebody over there and then we've got a routine worked out that reacts to that kind of element. But so I said no, but yeah, maybe I'm changing my mind a little bit and saying maybe a little bit of yes. But because I guess it eventually comes naturally that you do have, somebody that will take the lead and go, okay, well, this is happening. And then so you react to that situation. It's not so much reacting to a particular person, but it's a reacting to a situation. And once that situation kicks in, everybody has their role, because you've got to react on with a large scale puppet, the body moves, the legs have got to move. So you're not actually reacting with a person, you're reacting with the movement of the puppet. And when that moves, then the legs got to move, and then the hands are going to move, and then the head's going to move, and you've got this kind of chain reaction.
Yeah, it takes this whole idea of acting is reacting to a biomechanical level, with the interactivity of a person and a puppet. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that comes with, being a really great puppeteer, that you can step outside your body and you can see what something's going to look like from a different perspective, and so, you may be operating a leg from underneath the puppet, but you're projecting yourself looking at the puppet and going, how does this leg look? Am I under the body? Am I in the right position? Am I reacting with the other leg, And so all those things come into play when puppeteering and being an excellent puppeteer.
Yeah, that hyper alertness and hyper awareness. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So your next creation sounds really exciting. I saw steampunk style rats in a superhero costume cat is kind of what I can take from it, but that was probably a really rudimentary way of explaining it. Tell us about it. This is a pitch for the next thing. So tell us all about your next project.
I can't tell you too much about it. But yeah, look, it's a funky space rock opera that we've been writing and developing over the last few months. It's a large-scale performance at our new space in Williamstown that we're developing and workshopping. It's a collaboration between A Blanck Canvas and the Cambodian Space Project, which are a Cambodian band, like funk soul band from Cambodia, which we've been in contact with for a while now, and kind of bouncing ideas off each other and saying, we've got to get together and do a show together. And so we've been back and forthing with some ideas and designs, and over the last few months developing this kind of crazy, out of this world, futuristic space rock opera where, this is kind of intergalactic space cat crash lands on a futuristic kind of planet and looking for the lost funk and there's these kind of repressed humanoid kind of characters that have been taken over by these Icarian overlords, and they're a repressed population, and they've kind of, they can't express themselves through music and that. So the space cat lands and she frees the population in a nutshell. Ridiculous, out of this world kind of a concept and an idea that we were absolutely loving, and so we've been working out like giant puppets and costumes and dance and music and film prosthetics and large scale puppetry and virtual reality and augmented reality and an audience being a part of the show as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of get stuck in this world, and you're a part of the show, which is cool and perfect for our new space in Williamstown. So we can kind of take on this humongous space and turn it into this wasteland, futuristic wasteland, which I think is perfect for the space and venue.
Oh, so cool. I get so excited by that. I love the idea of a space cat who loses her funk and has to go find the funk and then realizes that there's rats or something
well,
kind of creature.
George Clinton lost the funk in 1979, and we've been looking for it ever since.
Okay, well, you are listening to Talking Sock with One Orange Sock and Joe Blanck. We'll be right back after the break. Make sure you hit subscribe and follow One Orange Sock Productions on Instagram. More with Joe in just a second.
This is Philip Miller.
I'm Richard Bradshaw.
I'm Sue Wallace, and you are listening to
Talking Sock.
Talking Sock Podcast.
A One Orange Sock production.
This is the #1 podcast for puppetry in the country.
Your one-stop shop for all things puppetry arts and practitioners.
The #1 puppetry podcast in Australia.
Follow this podcast.
We believe that podcasts should be advert-free. So if you like what you're listening to, there's a new way to help support our podcast. No monthly subscriptions, just a simple tip to share your kindness and to help us get by. Follow the link in the podcast notes or at oneorangesock.com to buy us a coffee. Thanks for your support and thanks for listening to Talking Sock.
Hello, darlings. This is Ronnie Burkett, and you're listening to Talking Sock, my favorite puppetry podcast.
Welcome back. You are listening to Talking Sock with Pete Davidson and Joe Blanck. We've been talking about large-scale roving puppetry and Joe's work in statement site activations and shows like The Guardian and The Messenger. But now, Joe, it's time to talk more about how you've built somewhat of a puppetry community here in Melbourne. So firstly, I want to ask you about the team that you have and with you and the network of puppeteers and builders that you work with. What does it take and who does it take to successfully elicit the work that you do?
Well, I guess there's two elements to that. There's the building side of it, and then there's the puppetry side of it. Some of our team cross over in those two departments and build and perform. And I think that's a really great skill set to have when building a puppet, to have some sort of knowledge of performance on how a puppet needs to move, how heavy a puppet is, how it's going to feel when you're holding it for 5 minutes above your head when you're building it. And if you do have both those elements, then I think you make a great puppeteer and a great maker. The team that we have built over the years has developed over time through small jobs that we've built and learning new skills and developing new skills from small puppets to large puppets. The same principles come across from a small puppet to a big puppet. There's definitely materials and elements that you need to work around when thinking about building something. That you need it to be lightweight, you need it to be durable, you need it to handle outdoor weather, things like that. It might get wet, it might get dirty, it needs to be cleaned, all those sort of things. So all those things come into it when, as a maker, you kind of pick up on these kind of materials and skills and stuff. But as a puppeteer and as a part of the team, it's got a lot to do with being a part of the team, I think. You can be an amazing puppeteer and a dickhead, and at the end of the day, you might not get the job. But it's all about working as a team, I think, is the big key when working as a builder or a maker. You've got to be mindful of the person that you're working next to and the person that's working on the next part of the puppet that you're working on or performing the thing that you're performing with. As a maker, you need to understand what the next process is. If you're in hard fabrication and you're doing a mechanism, you've got to know that the person next to you needs to fabricate it and put a soft foam on it, and it needs to still be able to move in that way that it needs to move. And just because it moves when you've put a hinge on it doesn't mean it's the correct movement after you cover it with some foam and some silk, or and so you've got to understand the process that comes after you. And same with a puppeteer, you need to be able to move the puppet and communicate with the person next to you and move fluidly with the person next to you and move and understand them and work with them to achieve your goal. And if you don't communicate and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do it my way and my way's the best way, then it'll look rubbish. It just takes your way and the person's way next to you to move together to create, and achieve the goal that you're looking for. And if you don't communicate and you don't work together, it'll look shit.
Yeah. I think puppetry is designed to be an egoless art form for that matter. If you're not working towards making the object look real, then it's two brains on the one piece of movement. It doesn't work. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay, so Joe, it's time for our segment called the Geek Out, in which I get a guest and myself to mention something that has been getting us through this time of social isolation that we've been in. My Geek Out for this week is an app. It's a fun little app that you can play with your friends in a house party. It's called Space Teams. And in making this app work, you need to be on the same Wi-Fi network. But basically what it is, you are on an app that has a series of controls, and your job is to flick those controls on and off. They might be the flux capacitor, they might be the thingy-majig. They have a series of ridiculous names, and you need to know what they all are very quickly, because someone will also be yelling those controls that you need to switch off at you. And through a series of levels, the thing is going to fall apart and it starts to get rickety and crotchety, and it's extremely stressful, but a lot of fun to play with your housemates. So my little plug for this week in the Geek Out is Space Teams. Check it out in the App Store. Joe, what's your Geek Out for this week?
I don't know, I'm going to check that out. That sounds pretty rad.
That's cool. That's
cool. My Geek Out, like I mentioned, apart from smashing heaps of Netflix, is virtual reality. I've been getting into a little bit. So I thought just when coronavirus hit and thought I'm going to be in lockdown for quite some time, I thought, shit, I need to get a virtual reality headset and create my own virtual world. So I did, with very little knowledge or experience on it, but I was super into it. And I've always been interested in augmented reality and virtual reality. And so I got myself a Oculus Rift secondhand.
I was going to say.
Absolutely. Secondhand, $300 on eBay from some dude who wanted to sell it because he needed to buy a stove.
Priority's good.
So I snatched it up. I needed to upgrade my computer a little bit on the graphics card, but it didn't take too much to get my rig VR ready. And so, I've been knee deep into Tilt Brush, which is a virtual reality painting and sculpting program. So it's painting in virtual reality, and it is fucking awesome. It's so much fun.
Oh, that's so cool.
And being a painter and a sculptor, being able to paint in like oil paints in a virtual world where I can kind of move around. I can just like slap paint on in space and then move around it and create creatures and paint in like light and fire and
oh my God.
And it's so much fun. So much fun. So I've been creating virtual worlds and creating, you can expand and contract this kind of whatever you're working on. So you can paint a tiny flower and then, and then zoom out or zoom in. You can create a flower and then zoom in, and then create a microscopic bug or a world within that flower. It's so I've been like creating trees and forests and houses, and then you can kind of zoom in and keep going deeper and deeper and deeper. It's pretty fascinating.
Oh my gosh.
So,
and what applications could that be for your work as well? Like, can you
lots,
export this?
Yeah. So you can export and import like 3D models. So I can, like, I'm already into 3D virtual modeling programs like ZBrush and things like that. So I can kind of model my characters, and I'll model a character, then I'll print it on my 3D printer, and then we take patterns off it and build things out of it. So, but I can, I also use that as a massive, fantastic tool to show off my designs and present them to clients. And so you can do like a 3-dimensional, turnaround on a character or on a sculpture or whatever. But I can import them into Tilt Brush, so I can have a creature and then I can give it hair, or like hair made out of fire, or I can import a character and then I can give it a costume. So I can give it a silk flowing kind of outfit, or I can create a world for a character. I can import a character and then I can create the forest that it lives in, and then I can do a video camera path, so I can kind of fly around that area and film it and replay it to a client, or just for fun. So I'm actually super into that at the moment, for fun, but also for value for the work that I do as well. Just creating just recently for the space that we did in that we've got in Williamstown, I just created Williamstown virtually and created the buildings that we've got, and then I put all my creatures in there and like lit fires and created like giant trees and giant rats and stuff running around in the space. And then I just did like a fly through, so I can kind of show what it would look like from different perspectives, and what it would look like from underneath the puppet looking up at the giant kind of messenger or guardian or whatever, but then seeing what it would look like if it was from a helicopter or a drone's perspective. Been geeking out in VR.
That's easily so far my favorite Geek Out. That opportunity to do that in a space. I just wouldn't go outside. But also what you've managed to do is you've taken that idea of a leisure activity and then gone and applied it to your own work. I won't call you a workaholic, Joe, but
no,
there's a thought there.
Getting there.
All right. So what else is out there for you in puppetry and performing arts that you want to get your hands on that you haven't yet?
Look, I'd probably like to have a crack in some sort of augmented reality performance. I've been kind of pitching the idea for a while and nothing's kind of really stuck at the moment. Like the technology's getting really fucking awesome at the moment. So, it's augmented reality's been a bit glitchy, and your lights, you got to get in the right light and stuff like that. But now it's just getting so good, and it's getting cheaper and easy to do. And to be able to kind of walk around a space and have this mishmash of kind of real life creatures and an augmented reality version of that as well, whether it's through augmented reality goggles or, on your phone or on your tablet or something. I'd really like to kind of tap into that in a project. I've mucked around with it in my own time and on a small scale, but I'd absolutely love to get into it on a larger scale and in a group of people kind of walking around a space and interacting with each other, and that I think would be really cool.
I'm really keen to kind of get a sense from you as to what you think A Blanck Canvas's brand is, or how you sell it to people.
It's puppetry in a sense. Like, we don't just do puppetry, but we are thinking outside the box. Merging art and technology, I think, is a really cool element to what we do, and I'm really excited about it, that you've got this traditional puppetry techniques spliced with some sophisticated technology that can kind of, whether that's animatronics or LED lighting or projection mapping or whatever, but you've got this beautiful art form that's just got so much range, and then merging it with technology that can enhance that and take you out of this world and put you in another world. And I think that's kind of what we've been doing, and we would really like to do more of. Every day we're kind of like, let's try this, or can we implement this idea into what we do, and just moving forward in creating new ideas through performance art and puppetry.
And as far as moving forward goes, I want you to think a little bit broader outside of A Blanck Canvas and more towards Australian puppetry as a whole. Where do you see Australian puppetry going in the next 10 years?
I'd like to see it evolving around Williamstown, where we've set up camp over the next 10 years. I think I'd love to see this evolve into a space of workshop and performance and large-scale puppetry, being this kind of mecca hub of Australian puppetry, coming out of like getting together and performing in a large scale, massive puppeteers and makers and teaching and developing skills in one place, rather than all of us doing random stuff in our basements or workshops or bedrooms, and kind of getting together and skill sharing and developing kind of this art form on a massive scale.
Yeah, Jess Knight mentioned to me in her episode the idea of just not doing it alone. And I think that's something that I'm really keen on seeing more of. Do you think that you might get Joe Blanck or A Blanck Canvas overseas somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like we were already overseas, and we're already performing and doing some great gigs just before all this coronavirus. Now things have happened. I'm kind of turning back towards just focusing on us locally and developing, A Blanck Canvas, but also Australian puppetry in Melbourne out of necessity. But also, maybe this is where we should have been focusing to begin with. But we might not get some international work for a while due to the circumstances. But I think, maybe we just need to turn inwards for a little bit and gather our troops together locally and see what we can do as a mass, as a group, and see what we can come up with.
You say turning inwards. I kind of think about how when you developed The Guardian and The Messenger, specifically The Guardian, the idea of looking into what's happening in your life and that unfortunate passing of your pets becoming this artwork. But I'm interested in how other concepts and stories of yours have come about. How would you describe what your art is and where those stories come from you?
Yeah, look, I definitely think it's my art. I would always think what I do and the ideas that I have and the direction that the company or myself kind of pushes is in my own personal kind of drive and creation, and I wouldn't want to think I was driven from just how to pay the rent. It's definitely something that is a personal art form, but also I'm a collective, and we're a collective of artists as A Blanck Canvas. So it's a group of us that evolve and grow into the shows and the ideas that we do have. So we definitely kind of get together and go, okay, what do we want to create? What are we interested in? What are the things that we're into right now? And, they usually always end up being something to do with how we can make the world a better place, in a nutshell. And it kind of always comes back to that. We're neighbours with the Sea Shepherd at the moment in Williamstown. So now we're like, hey, let's just get together with these guys and let's go save some whales and save some animals and stuff. So I'm like, we're all kind of like pumped about that at the moment.
Yeah.
So, I think that's the direction that we're kind of might be, heading in. But we've done some really great gigs with the zoo. promoting awareness of, endangered animals and all that sort of stuff, which has always been such a great feeling when, you feel like you're accomplishing something like that. And, we've worked with Make-A-Wish Foundation, where we've given a wish to, some kids that want to, one girl, Miller, her wish was to meet a dragon, and we delivered her a baby dragon. And, that was just one of the best jobs that we've ever done. And so we're always looking for gigs like that we can, do something that's super fun. We love what we do. We're kind of blessed that we get to dick around with puppets all the time and we get paid for it. And, when a job like that comes up, that we can actually, do something good for somebody or multiple people, it's just ticks all the boxes. And we can't do them all the time. And we wish we could, but, we're striving to getting like funding through councils and stuff like that, where we can focus on things that we really love and want to do. But that's the general goal.
Oh, I think there's probably going to be a whole nother Talking Sock episode with Joe Blanck around grant writing and funding, but I won't go there tonight because we are getting towards the end of our discussion. But your work does sound certainly like it is reactive and inspired by what is going on around you, and I love that. And so what is your advice to young puppeteers just trying to make it out there?
Yeah, I think taking risks is a big part of it. I think, doing what you love always comes across. Yeah, and taking some chances and not doing what everybody else is doing. There's a idea of like get on what's trendy at the moment or what's popular and jump on that kind of bandwagon. And then I think by the time you kind of get on it, it's already gone. But I think, always looking for new ways to create and develop your craft, I think is always a good start.
Yeah, that's it. I felt like I was particularly guilty for not jumping on TikTok the moment it came out with all the puppets and not jumping into YouTube once COVID isolation happened. And then I just was like, I don't particularly feel very inspired to make something on those mediums. And I was kind of kicking myself about that for a while. And then I was just like, no, but maybe what I'm making now is enough, And so, that would be my thought on on trying to jump on the bandwagon. Yeah. Anyway, Joe, if you had someone in puppetry, a hero of sorts in puppetry, who would it be and why?
I guess there's, in puppetry, I'd say, locally, like Philip Miller's always been a big hero of mine. I've worked with him recently and, for a while in some fantastic projects. But when I was an up-and-coming puppet maker and stuff, I kind of always inspired to work with him or, make amazing puppets like Philip. And I guess, everybody's been a big inspiration for me that I've worked with over the years, just learning skills and through people from the amazing makers from the Creature Technology Company and even the guys that I work with today. I'm totally inspired by everybody that I work with in puppetry and all their kind of different skills sets that they have. But I'm inspired by everything, music, people, just day-to-day people and interactions kind of inspire me. I'm always looking for keeping a lookout in things that kind of day-to-day things that kind of inspire me and different artists like James Jean is an amazing painter that's just ridiculously talented but just creates these surreal worlds that are just not anything that you could obviously he imagines them and I think just looking at other worlds and different dimensions and ideas that are just really outside your kind of day-to-day life. I'm not really into kind of watching a TV drama that's just about kind of general life. I'm see that every day. So, just seeing, worlds and I'm kind of into, we're getting back onto things we were doing in ISO, but Midnight Gospel on Netflix is this crazy series that's just a different way you could, and you would love it because it's a interview that he interviews these kind of It might be a Buddhist monk or a poet or something, but it's in this tripped out cartoon world. But he's just given an interview to somebody, and the visuals don't match the dialogue that goes with it, and it's just a fascinating way to interview somebody and to entertain. So I would check that out as well.
Cool. Yeah, amazing. Well, then I have to ask then, like you've definitely spoken about how you're more interested in the sort of, I don't like using that word fantasy, I'm not sure why, but the fantasy world. What is your augmented reality? What is Joe Blanck's ideal fantasy world or augmented reality?
I'm into technology and the future, and I'm looking forward to having my head in a glass jar and having a robot body and all that. I'm kind of I'm totally looking forward to that world, but I'm also pretty into nature and getting away and switching off and that as well. So it'd probably be some sort of futuristic mishmash of robotic kind of trees and aliens and robots. There's definitely going to be some robots in there.
Man, that sounds awesome. I'm down for that. All right, well, we are out of time. So, Joe, thank you so much for talking sock with us today. You can find Joe on Instagram at A Blanck Canvas and at www.ablanckcanvas.com. That's blank with BLANCK. Thanks for listening with us today, and make sure you subscribe for more great puppetry arts and practitioner interviews. I have been Pete Davidson, that puppet guy, and we'll talk sock again soon.
Thanks for listening. Now we want to hear from you. Each week, we'll post a series of questions related to every interview. Join the conversation on Twitter at TalkingSockcast. You can help us bring puppet power to the podcasting world by hitting subscribe, liking our socials, and telling your friends. Like us on Instagram at OneOrangeSockProductions and check out our episode blog at oneorangesock.com. You can support our podcast by pledging to us on Patreon. Your support helps fund our audio mastering, interview transcriptions, and much, much more. Find the link in the podcast notes and earn yourself a shout out on our socials. Head to our website at oneorangesock.com or talk to us on Twitter to see how you can show your support. Our music is composed by Elizabeth Maniscalco and our cover art is by Chad Barnier. Without them, this podcast wouldn't be possible. We'll be back next week with another great episode here at Talking Sock.